I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet. I want to remind everybody that they should be downloading this show, subscribing, spreading the love, sharing the love, and giving us that 5-star review. So go to thedailycheatsheet.com or whatever platform you listen to us on and give us some love. How was that, Mend?
Fantastic. Give us some love, subscribe and share, and tell others. It's the fastest way for us to grow. We're seeing exponential growth by people who tell other people about us.
I need your love. I need your approval. So I texted somebody before, and you tell me, guys, if this is a weird response. I'm just curious, asking them about if they could do something, and they said, no, sadly, so-and-so died. And I said, I'm sorry. And their response was, it's a blessing. Now, there are a lot of ways you could read that message. Am I wrong?
I think the easiest way is, of course, they were suffering, and so this is now put them out of their misery, sort of thing. I'm trying to go with the most like normal response version.
Yeah, that's very kind. The other one is you are suffering and they're out of your misery.
But
It's a weird response. It's a weird response.
Thank you for saying that, because I didn't know what to say after that. I was like, a blessing in a good way, blessing in a bad way, because my head went to exactly where yours went to. Okay, let's cut with the chit chat. Let's get right to it. Golan, I was discussing this with men before, and I think something a lot of people don't want to talk about, don't like to talk about, and they just lump it in a group and they call it the left. And well, they should, because almost all of the acts of violence, if not all of the acts of violence, are being committed by the left. And we've often said the left is a religion. It's a religion of climate change. It's a religion of doomsday. It's a religion of America sucks. And it's a religion that celebrates socialism and hates America. And there's another religion about 6,000 miles away that believes sort of the same thing. And or they don't have to just be 6,000 or 7,000 miles away. They could be in Dearborn, Michigan, that believes the same exact thing go on. And we've witnessed what happens when that goes unchecked. And that's called radical Islam. And we're watching radical leftism. And, sadly today, this is a crazy story with this ICE shooter, because his aim was off and he didn't kill ICE agents. But these people are being radicalized. And yes, a few detainees were killed. And even that's a horrendous thing.
But that's what needs to be focused on. That he killed the people that he was supposedly trying to advocate for with bullets.
Right. And this goes to when everybody always says to me, oh, it's so easy to shoot. Well, apparently not for this guy, but go on to the bigger point. What's next? And is a bomb next? What's next after the gun? And what's next after writing on the casings? I mean, whoever even thought about writing on casings? This insanity, this evilness.
We're in a world now where, because of social media, because of the connectivity that everybody has, a lot of people look at it like this is a wonderful thing. We can connect on so many levels. We're always in touch with one another, etc. I understand that there are benefits, of course, but the biggest problem with it is that people now have an unchecked amount of access to basically anything that someone is able to manipulate into their eyeballs and into their brain. And it's the reason why one bad act now is no longer just a shocking moment, but becomes A, celebrated, and B, proliferates. You see one bad thing happen, and I know, at least for me, I don't know if you have this reaction, I go, this just gave permission for a lot of other people to do the same thing. Because now it becomes siloed into a political idea, at least the way it's presented is that it's been siloed into a political idea. So when someone murders a CEO of a healthcare company, and we watch so many people that have been radicalized celebrate that, that more people are going to want to now be celebrated that way, are going to see it as a political statement, et cetera, and then they're going to do it too. And then it's just going to spread and spread and spread. So your question is a good one, because you're not just talking about one guy with a gun. All you need is for the next person to do whatever the next level of crazy is. And when that gets celebrated, depending on how it's framed by those manipulating everybody, it will then be emulated as well. And that will happen over and over and over again. And it will continue to escalate until it eventually becomes something like a war, a civil war, genocide, who knows what. But the fact that right now there are so many people out there that live online, and you know that phrase, right? They're just perpetually online, and they are just seeing this stuff just pumped into their cerebral cortex on a regular basis means that this is not the end of it. This is the beginning of it.
Very well put. So we have this group in this country on the left that have been calling everyone on the right Nazis and fascists and a threat to our democracy. I mean, if you really believe that stuff, if you believe that Trump is a Nazi and everybody who votes for him are Nazis, it's incumbent upon you to kill him. That's like if you could go back and take out Hitler, wouldn't you? So that's what they're doing. And, I had a friend who posted something, some German lady talking about the parallels between Trump and Hitler. And I'm like, bro, this is vile. You could hate the guy all you want. That's fine. You're allowed to say what you want. But it's a disgrace to all the millions of people that were killed in the Holocaust by an actual Hitler, by the guy who actually committed a genocide, to compare this guy that you don't like his immigration policies to. I'm like, pick something else. Don't be that pig, because that's what you are. And I didn't get anywhere with him, but it doesn't matter. I saw Hillary Clinton today talking about we need to tone down the rhetoric. And in this exact same speech, she pointed the finger at the right. And they keep on making this baseless claim that there's more violence from the right. There isn't. It's factually not true. It is the left that allowed BLM to burn down cities. It is the left that allows these insane criminals getting out of jail and killing people and slashing people every day on the streets. It is the left that keeps on doing targeted assassinations and vandalizing Tesla dealerships and burning down anything they disagree with, from
And
ICE
let's not
detention
forget the
centers.
beginning of the summer with the going after the ICE officers, right? There have been 3 instances of ICE officers actually being shot at. The list, I mean, this is a massive list of what we're talking about, but I want to get
By
to
the
your
way,
point.
just for that, just to talk about the ICE agents being attacked like that, one of the reasons why ICE agents are masked is because they were being doxxed, they were being attacked, their families were being threatened. And then you see someone like Gavin Newsom in California passing laws saying no more masking for the ICE agents, which is basically this circle of we know what will happen if they're not masked. We know there's going to be violence against them. And so they mask up, and then they use that masking that they've caused to say that makes you fascist, to say we will not mask, and they're continuing this perpetual cycle. This is the thing you see all the time. By the way, you mentioned Islam, right? This is a major thing they do, is they will send suicide bombers into restaurants and synagogues and buses over and over and over again until finally Israel says, "Oh, we got to build a wall to keep out these suicide bombers." And then they say, hey, that wall means you're oppressing us. And so now you're a bad guy for doing so. And so now the world wants the wall torn down, which will then perpetuate the cycle. This is something we have seen them do forever. And they're just applying the same tactics now to America.
It's funny that you mentioned Gavin Newsom, because part of that law that he passed, they just did it. They shoved it through, that says ICE agents, federal law enforcement, cannot wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
But they make an exemption. If you're robbing stores, if you're shoplifting, absolutely you can wear a mask. That's when they want you to wear a mask. It wasn't even a year ago that they were mandating everybody wore a mask here in California, 4 years after the pandemic. But if you're an ICE agent, no, you cannot wear a mask. So welcome to Gavin Newsom's California.
And again, wasn't he on Colbert last night talking about this anti-ICE stuff? Newsom, he's constantly talking about this anti-ICE stuff. And Golan, again, I want to go back to this thing because I really think we have to look at them as a terrorist organization, the full leftist movement at this point. If you are getting on and screaming, listen to, go to Iran and listen to their prayer chants every morning. And listen to them talk about death to the Jews, death to America, death to big Satan, death to little Satan. Well, you hear that programming for 40 years or 50 years on constant loop in Iran or in Gaza or in wherever. It sticks. You're teaching it in classrooms. It sticks. This is the next logical progression. And what happens after guns go on? What happens after guns?
Well,
And
let me
this is
tell
why
you.
I
Okay, wait, I want to answer your question. And I want to answer your question based on history. Okay? We don't have to speculate because this isn't the first time we've seen this exact pattern. I mentioned this to you offline yesterday. But for many people, they don't know the history of how Iran went from being what it had been to being the Islamist center of terrorism in the world. Okay? It's because the mullahs Khomeini came in and basically said that the Shah, who had been running Iran, was He said a lot of things. He was a U.S. puppet. He was a Zionist agent, all the, corrupt, this, that, all that stuff. But the most important thing is he used the same words that are being used today for Donald Trump. He's a fascist. They used this word. That was the big word. He was beyond reform. He was a fascist. He was illegitimate. He was corrupt. He was all of this stuff. And he went to the leftist, this is true, the leftist students, the Iranian students, okay, who didn't just say, we're going to protest. They took up arms. When you look at the guerrilla groups that rose up in Iran because Khomeini manipulated the leftist students, you're talking about guerrilla groups like the People's Mujahideen of Iran. You're talking about Fadayin al-Kaq. You're talking about all these Marxist and Maoist movements. The same thing you're watching today in the United States. They all rose up and they caused violence. Universities were the hotbeds of radicalism. Sound familiar? We've seen this movie step by step before. And for all of you, if we have anybody listening on college campuses, any of you Marxists or Maoists or radicals that think that you're doing the right thing because you've been convinced, like they were convinced, to take up arms and cause violence, let me tell you the next step that happened after indeed the Shah was deposed and the mullahs took over. The first thing they did was they turned around and they murdered, arrested, and imprisoned every single student, every single leftist, every single Marxist, every single Maoist that had come in to help them do it because they were just useful idiots like you are today. If you want to know where this is headed, just look at your history. History always reveals your future.
Well said. And man, I like what we do and I like what we speak about. I like especially the points that both of you have brought up about the Christians that are being slaughtered across the world. And we're witnessing today fires with going on with ISIS. And where is this again? Just remind me.
So it's in parts of Syria.
Yeah, in parts of Syria, just Christians being slaughtered. And take aside the Christians that have been slaughtered in Africa and all over the world, and nobody paid any attention. Thank God we've been paying attention because all lives matter to us, especially when it comes to Christianity and Judaism. And you have Mark Levin, God bless his soul, for going on these, calling people out right and left for not saying what this is. This is a genocide. When you kill over 1,000 Christians for absolutely no reason, that's a genocide. Okay?
It's not just the number that they're killing; it's the intent. So when it comes to genocide, a lot of it has to do with what your intentions are.
Of course.
If you just get into a war with somebody and 10,000 people die, that may not be genocide. But if your intent is to exterminate them, which is what the radical jihadis are all trying to do. I mean, look.
And by the way, they say it out loud.
I thought I was pretty explicit by that, but thank you for clarifying.
We could look at the last 1,400 years of Islam's track record. We don't have to guess. We don't have to think about what they want to do. Islam is a colonizing religion. It is in their doctrine. It's in the Quran to colonize. They want to make the entire world Muslim. That is their goal. That is what they want to happen. So I think I have a screenshot here somewhere of like all the different things, the different quotes from the Quran where it calls for them to behead or kill the infidels. And it's rife with it. It's all over the place.
That's right. That's why the list is long. You mentioned Syria. We could talk about the Congo. We could talk about Kasanga. We could talk about Nigeria. We could talk about where else? Yelwata. We could talk about the Sahel region. There is literally all over the world, Islamists are murdering Christians, and nobody's talking about it because they're so busy attacking the only democracy in the Middle East in the middle of an existential war. It's something wrong with that.
I was going to give you just some quotes from the Quran. So in 2:191, it says, slay all the unbelievers wherever you find them. In 5.33, maim and crucify the infidels if they criticize Islam. So count me in that one. Quran 9.123, make war on the infidels living in your neighborhood. Quran 8.12, terrorize and behead those who believe in scriptures other than the Quran. 9.5, when the opportunity arises, kill the infidels wherever you find them. I could go on, but this is the one they call the religion of peace. It's insane. So if you want to know what these guys are doing by burning the villages, the Christian villages in Syria, they are trying to get rid of the Christians. You look at Lebanon, they effectively did it. You look at every other Muslim colonized country, they've done it. The only ones that are somewhat moderate right now are the UAE and a little bit to that extent Saudi Arabia, where the UAE has completely changed course, and they have a great moderate form of Islam where they practice coexistence. So they've built mosques and churches and synagogues in their country, and they're trying to exemplify what coexistence would look like. And I applaud them for that. But this is
Well
what,
said,
it's not a
well said,
mystery.
both of you. I just think it's extremely important to bring this stuff up. I know people think we're hyperbolic when we talk about Qatar or Saudi Arabia or these people paying people. Tim Dillon got axed from the Saudi Arabia comedy tour, and he was getting $375,000 to perform in Saudi Arabia, and he got axed for making a few jokes, which, when you think about it, that is a hell of a lot of money for a borderline comedian, Golan. I mean, he's funny. He gets the
Wait, they
Netflix
kicked him off the
specials.
show?
They kicked him out of he's not allowed to go to Saudi Arabia and perform. Andrew Schultz is going, making probably way more than Tim Dillon. It's a full lineup of people, and we could find out who that lineup is. But the only reason I know this, so if anybody's wondering and that says, oh, you guys are crazy, they're not paid money. Okay, to get the Killers, one of the biggest bands in the world, to perform, it's like $1 million for the night, $1.5 million. Tim Dillon's getting 375 grand Golan to perform in Saudi Arabia. I can't imagine that's just for the giggles.
No, and this is the same thing that they've done many times. There is an element of, and I'm not just talking about Saudi Arabia, I'm talking about a lot of these. Qatar does it for sure. A lot of the whitewashing elements. It's why you see Live Golf, for instance. It's why you see these groups buying basketball teams. It's just, hey, look, we're just like you in the West. Look over there because we're just like you. Why would you pay attention to us? Sort of thing. And the more they can normalize, not just them, but all of these countries, the more they can normalize things, the better. Hey, don't forget, Pablo Escobar used to have the football players, soccer players, for those of you not in Europe, come to his house and play games. You're talking about the professional championship soccer players come to his house. This is their way of saying we're normal too.
I think he had 100,000 people at his funeral. Just some. I'm probably overinflating the number, but man, it goes to show you when we talk about this stuff with Qatar money, with Saudi Arabia money, we're not like sort of joking around about this stuff. There's no accident that Theo Von came back from Qatar with Trump, and all of a sudden he's become a Mensa theologian on Middle East policy.
He's just asking questions, Judah.
Yeah.
That's it. Just ridiculous. Look, let's put it this way, men. Andrew Schultz suddenly changed his mind.
I hope it's not the case with Andrew Schultz, but yes.
Yeah, I know. But they all suddenly changed their mind, gave little speeches, had to bring it up. In my opinion, that's what I can tell is I'm just asking questions. This is over and over and over again. All the same
that was
people.
what Theo Von said.
Correct.
It feels like a genocide. You don't get to feel a genocide.
I just
These
wanted
people
to
started a war.
Yeah, the reason I just brought it up was simply because I'm happy Tim Dillon acknowledged the fact that he was getting 375 grand to speak in Saudi Arabia. So this is a trend. This isn't something that he just was the first person that's actually come out and said the
maybe they woke
outlandish-
up and realized that they don't want a fat Slav gay man on stage in Saudi Arabia making jokes.
Yeah,
No, the guy's not even funny.
You know that
sweaty
it's
gay man.
It's because he made the comments that he made. Because if you are whitewashing and one of the people you're inviting to be part of the whitewash parade suddenly says the stuff that you are trying to avoid being said, you can't have him be a part of it.
Well,
That's exactly what he did, by the way.
What did he say?
I don't have the quotes in front of me, but I can tell you that he's like, hey, what's the big deal? I'll take the money for a place they chop off hands. And he started making all these Arab jokes. And he's like, as long as I get paid, I'll look for the quotes. I'll quote it in a moment.
It's quite funny, man. But I want to move on, though, to a story. And when Golan sent this to me, I said, we need to resource this. But this is why I think putting maximum pressure on the administration sometimes does help, because I think they really needed to see that the conservative base, the MAGA base, conservative base, whatever you want to call it, really wants the DOJ moving. And they want Pam Bondi moving. And we're seeing now that Comey, multiple reports from NBC, from Fox News, that he will be indicted within a few days, man.
Great.
And I think when you put maximum pressure on these people, you sometimes get maximum results. And and I know sometimes you go at me a little bit for putting a little too much pressure. I'm not blaming you. I know I could be a zealot like that sometimes, and I'm passionate about certain things, but this is one of those things I really wanted them to move a little quicker on.
And now I'm going to say they better get it right and they better get a conviction. You do not fumble this case. You make it airtight, you get in there, and you make sure that guy goes to jail. That would be the best message to the criminals and crooks, especially the recent Democrat criminal and crooks that have gotten away with actual threat to our democracy by trying to overthrow a sitting president. The guy was coming into office. This is all done when Trump was coming into office, this whole Russiagate collusion. It sidetracked the presidency. You can't get that time back. Make them pay. Make them pay dearly.
By the way, Golan, to his point, I agree. I don't think that'll necessarily be the outcome because of the judges and the juries wherever they try him in Virginia. And it's Virginia probably where he'll be tried. So to Men's point, yeah, get all your ducks in a row and all that, but you're still left with, the odds are, an extremely liberal judge in an extremely liberal place with extremely liberal jurists. That's if this goes to a jury.
I am a bit worried, I have to say. I understand that they probably have evolved since then, but this isn't the first time they have either moved forward or arrested somebody or pressed charges on somebody that there was a righteous reason to do so. Remember some of the Hamas-loving students and people who were like fueling the college campus riots and all of that. And they were arrested and they eventually were let go. Of course, some of them later had other consequences, which were delightful, not because of what happened with the
Well, they
arrest or
got
with the press.
blocked. Remember, they got blocked by judges.
Of course, but that's my point. They got blocked, but they also didn't build the case they needed to build beforehand. And if they're doing this now, I really hope that even if they get blocked, they have something in their back pocket that is already pre-built, knowing that that can happen, that they can use to take that judge's knees out from under them.
Listen, we're just going on what was reported. We're not actually going on if this is actually going to happen. We shall see if this actually happens. I am happy, though, that they are deciding men to move forward with this.
I found the Tim Dillon quote, so I know that we're in the middle of another conversation, but I just want to read some of them to you so our audience can hear them as well. He starts off by making fun of everybody. The House of Saud is paying us hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of us millions. And for those of you who said they wouldn't do such a show, boo hoo hoo for you. You weren't offered. No one invited you. So what? They have slaves. So what? He said, some of you don't want to go because they don't want to interact with slaves. And I'm like, well, why not? They'd be deferential, right? I imagine the slaves in those countries are good at what they do. And then he said, if I see someone behanded, meaning they're chopping a hand off, that might be interesting to just kind of see actually how they do it. I might look down. And if I'm looking at the floor, I will look the other way. And here's the end of the quote, and the most important part, the part that really got them, because he's saying the quiet part out loud, because I'm being paid enough money to look the other way. So that's just some of his quotes. He went further, but those are enough. You get the idea of why they were like, you are disinvited.
Talk about this guy being a dimwit. He accepted it knowing what they were all about. They chop off hands, they stone the gays or whatever. All right, he's gay. Dillon is gay. He still accepted the money. He was going to go there. And then he lost it because he's a doofus and an idiot. So he was willing to do it. Like the gay stuff didn't bother him. The killing of the gays or the chopping off the hands, all that's no big deal. You're not allowed to be Christian there. There's not one church in that country. Like all of that
He
stuff.
said, there's another quote that I didn't read you where he talks about, do I care about the gays and the women and the Christians? Yeah, but I care about my pocketbook even more. Something to that effect. So yeah, he acknowledged all of it.
Good job, Timmy. Good job.
So you see, there you are. Right?
Ahmed al-Jolani, or whatever, al-Shara, whatever nom de jour he's going by these days, the guy who was literally beheading people for ISIS, has been invited to the U.S. and he's now at the UN giving a speech about whatever, as his people are burning the Christian villages.
Yeah, this is the most amazing thing, Golan, when you watch this crap show that's going on at the UN. A lot of people are not watching this today, and a lot of it's going to go unreported what's going on at the UN today, but it literally looks like a terrorist convention.
It is a terrorist convention.
Yeah, right. It is a terrorist convention that's going on in the United Nations. And you're the one that brought up to me yesterday, the only thing that would have made Trump's speech any better was if at the end of it, he said, you're out. You're all out of here. It
would have been great. Would have
here's
been
your
great.
eviction
I
notice,
wish.
Pack your
I
bags.
wish.
He made
yeah.
Erdogan walk the streets of New York today, just like he made Macron walk yesterday. So that was great. That's fantastic. And talking about Erdogan, I mean, if you want to talk about the biggest threat in the Middle East right now, it is Turkey. Turkey is by far the biggest threat. I have a prediction. I think before Trump's out of office, he's going to bomb Iran again.
They now have images of them rebuilding.
Sure do.
They're defiant. They're being defiant. They're claiming that they have more new hypersonic missiles or whatever. Doesn't matter. Russia just agreed to give Iran some small scale nuclear reactors for power. I don't know why they would need that. They have more oil than God, but they want that. They want the nuclear radioactive material. So Russia's going to try to give it to them. Iran is no longer a serious threat. Turkey is a big threat. Turkey is a threat that can turn the Middle East into radical lunatics. Turkey, the country, was on a great trajectory. They were moderate. They were one of the most moderate forms of Islam out there. They had great relationship with Israel. When they had those big earthquakes, Israel would fly in tons of army planes with experts. They would set up field hospitals and help them out and do rescue missions and all that stuff. Now they are just the latest iteration. It's almost like Erdogan is like Muammar Gaddafi was, or Saddam Hussein was, where they just make these giant proclamations that we are going to rescue all of the Muslims from the world and we're going to kill the Jews. That's his big rallying cry these
I think
days.
it's also important to note that they've bankrupted their country. When you look at Iran's economy, it's totally bankrupt. So these people hold on to power over there by one thing, and that's brute force.
And we will demonize the Jews.
Right, and
Every time there's a problem at home, look over there, guys.
But that's what I'm referring to also with brute force.
Before we move on from the UN, though, I just want to point out you said, oh, it felt like a terrorist convention. Do you know who spoke? Now, the people who spoke, just look at the speakers list, and it is such a shocking list of people. And you think it almost, if you didn't know better, it almost doesn't make sense that this is meant to be the arbiter of moral good in the world. And until you take a step back and you start to actually look country by country and go, well, all these people are represented, not because they need to sit there and know their place, because the dictators and despots and tyrants need to know that they are being held to account by all the rest of the countries. They get up and talk. They get the same voting power as anybody else. When the Syrian president you mentioned today addressed the UN, first time in 6 decades a Syrian leader has spoken to the General Assembly. I don't know why they're starting now, why it's a big deal. Qatar's emir got up and spoke. Iran's president got up and spoke. Basically, every one of these places where there is either some kind of Islamist leader or socialist leader or despot or tyrant or dictator, they all get to stand up and have a conversation with everybody. And many years ago, they figured out that when they vote in blocks, when the Jew haters and the Muslims and the communists vote in blocks, it doesn't matter what is being presented to the UN. It can always pass, always pass, because everybody gets an equal vote. It's such a corrupt and ridiculous way for anything to run, much less the Hall of Nations and the world's parliament. It is truly ridiculous.
We foot the bill for the equivalent of 1.3 billion. But you know what I would not have had an issue with? If they took $375,000 of that money and paid Tim Dillon to perform there today. That
would have been great. Fat sweaty men getting up in front of homeless people who like to kill gay people. It is worth noting the president of Indonesia got up and made a speech.
Yeah, great speech.
It's the most populous Muslim country in the world with 250 million Muslims in it. Mm-hmm. And he said, we must also recognize, respect, and guarantee the safety and security of Israel. Only then can we have real peace, shalom. So those are his words. You got to give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely.
You know, I agree when it's consistent. I agree with you when it's consistent, not when it's for virtue signaling. I agree with you with this guy 100%. You look at Millet, you look at Gert Wilders, you look at a lot of these people. You know, you look at Andrew Fox, who is in London marching against anti-Semitism. When you look at people like Tommy Robinson, who have dedicated their whole lives, and Tommy Robinson is awesome. I encourage everybody to follow this guy. This guy is like speaking, this guy, God, I pray he has security. I pray he has as much security as possible for his family, because with what he's coming out and saying, he's not saying Israel first. He's saying Britain first. but we want to protect Israel at the same time. I mean, the things that are coming out of Tommy Robinson's mouth are brilliant. I pray we don't get there. The last thing I just wanted to talk about quickly, if it can be done quickly, as this go on. I was having the other night. I was having a Rosh Hashanah meal, and it was with a bunch of people that former Democrats. Some of them switched parties. It doesn't matter, and a majority of them were youngish women, and they were talking about they support Trump, especially with his Middle East policies, and this was a huge thing for them, and then I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine that's not Jewish, and it's not just him, but he has a couple of employees that are getting really nervous about the rhetoric coming out of Tucker Carlson. And, when you look at Patricia Heaton the other day on X, she's like, is there not one conservative that's going to call him out? She was screaming this on X. I mean, and this is a great Christian woman that just believes in Judeo-Christian values and believes in Israel and believes in America. And the thing a lot of us are starting to think is, do we have a place here? And I'm not just saying this as a Jew. I'm saying Americans are going to start looking at this part of I don't even want to call it the MAGA. I don't know what to call it, Golan, but there's a sickness. And I want you to read what Tucker came out and said today to Glenn Greenwald, that other liberal jackass who has totally opposing views than Tucker Carlson on many things, but they horseshoe at Israel. And I didn't bring up that he brought up the hummus thing at the Charlie Kirk's thing, which was an absolute atrocity. And anybody that defends it, go you know what yourself. It was the most blood libel trope that we've heard. But this thing that he wrote, and he says his sources told him that Bibi said this, right? The Bibi, the man that doesn't talk to anybody, that has the most sterile room ever made in the Knesset, who you literally can't bring a phone in. And go on, just please read what he said, because it's just sickening.
Bibi's running around. This is a fact. I'm not guessing about this because I talked to people he said it to, is running around the Middle East, his region in his own country, and telling people point blank, just stating it, I control the United States. I control Donald Trump. He's saying that. And again, I'm not guessing at all. That's a fact. I dare them to say that's not true because it is true. They know it's true. I'm an American. How do you think it makes me feel, even if I didn't vote for Trump, which I did? I campaigned for Trump. But even if I was Joe Biden, I'm an American. You can't treat, it's too humiliating. I can't handle that, and I shouldn't have to put up with that. He went on to say, I'm attacking my leaders who are allowing my nation of 350 million people to be forced into doing things that are bad for me and my children because of some other country. That is a violation of the most basic arrangement we have with our leaders, which is represent us, please, at least most of the time, and they're not. And there's an ongoing humiliation ritual designed to make us all crazy, designed to turn us into haters. I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of becoming what they call me. I'm not a hater, and I'm never going to become one. But I will never accept this. I shouldn't have to accept it. I have nothing to be ashamed of.
He also went on to say, by the way, I am not a bigot.
That's right.
And he said, listen, I know who I am, and I'm not a bigot like that. So if somebody calls me a bigot, it doesn't bother me. It would bother me if somebody said you gained 10 pounds. And by the way, Tucker, it does look like you put on a few pounds. But men,
he also called the war that Israel is in the middle of a defensive war launched by Hamas that Israel has been fighting for their very existence during. He called that not a war, but an expansion.
Yeah. So, man, this is something that we really do have to touch on and talk about. That's anecdotal data, the people I was talking to the other night. And I always bring up anecdotal data, but sometimes that's all we have to go on. But when you have people that are writers that write about this stuff, that don't necessarily know if they want to continue working at certain organizations because this is where they see it going. This is what Levin was talking about, is there's going to be a real war within the party in 2028.
I think it's already there. We're seeing a lot of that division. It'll probably get worse. I know which side to be on because you just have to look at where the lefties and the radicals and all those lunatics and whatever side they're on, I'm on the opposite side. So Tucker's on their side. Right? And you talk about whether or not we have a place here. This is America. Let him come and try to get me out of here. I'm not worried about that. I am worried about...
I'm saying in our party. This happens oftentimes where people say, "My party left me. I didn't leave my party." And that's what I'm referring to. I'm not referring to, do I have a place in America? Of course I have a place in America. But people are going to start asking themselves, do I have a place in this party? And if conservatives don't come out and speak out like Patricia Heaton is begging them to do, voters might not come out and turn out and vote for those people.
That is true. I mean, we did see Trump come out and admonish Tucker, said he doesn't know doesn't know what he's talking about. This was leading up to the Iran attack that we did, or we finished when Trump finished the war with Iran, which they started in 1979. So I agree with you. I wish more people would come out. I love the fact that the top of the party, the leader of the party, came out and did that. That took a lot of courage from the president to do, because the easier thing for him to do would be to just kind of sit on the sidelines and let Tucker do his thing, not to piss off his base, Tucker's base, and all that. But no, he didn't. He came out. He said, "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't get to decide what MAGA is." He just made him look like a fool. He made Tucker really look foolish with those statements. And then with the 12-minute war that he went in there, and we were in there for 12 or 20 minutes, he proved the guy didn't know what he was talking about. Tucker was talking about 10,000 Americans dead. In 20 minutes, nobody dead. We're all good.
The problem is that despite him being shown to be a jackass time and again, despite him shown to be wrong time and again, despite him being humiliated on the world stage time and again, he still has a massive audience, and the audience is growing because he is not only tapping into all the anti-Semites and all the racists and all the bigots who were just waiting for an opportunity for someone in the mainstream to give them tacit permission to suddenly say all the stuff that they wanted to say quietly in their bedroom out loud on the world stage. He also is convincing a lot of people because he seems like an authority. He seems like he's not the crazy, like we talked about the other day, Alex Jones shouting and shouting crazily with the crazy voice. He sounds like, I'm dressed just like you. Look at this suit, this tan, very beigey suit. I'm just like you. I'm normal. And when you look, the article that you sent me, Judah, that I just quoted from is on Yahoo News. Okay. I don't go to Yahoo News very often, but it seems a pretty milk toast place to look at news. Okay. And when I looked at the comments underneath this, they are stomach churning, because you have two people who comment like, "Whoa, this guy said it's a fact because he heard it from somebody. What's he, nuts?" And someone else was like,
Right.
"Here we
Look
go.
at, I
Adolf
always, by
speaks
the way,
again."
always go to the comment section, because that's
Yeah.
where the crazies comment.
The crazies comment, but the crazies are the world now. And there are 1,000 comments here where it's either Tucker only just realized this, AIPAC's spell needs to be broken, Israel's been controlling US presidents forever, and on and on and on. And then they start talking, of course, just for those of you who are still trying to pretend like anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism aren't the same thing. You have that one guy who forgot to read the manual and just starts saying Jews over and over again. So here's like Epstein. It's all about Epstein. Epstein is a J name, Jay.
That was my joke post. If his last name was Costanza, would anybody have
Right, exactly.
paid attention to this? But men, I want to go to men quickly, because the problem is when you have J.D. Vance hosting him.
There you go.
And when the problem is, and I'm not scared to say it, it's a serious issue. His son works for him. This is extremely dangerous. You're 100%
We were just on
right.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's X account, and her top page, her headline page, the image is her and Tucker. So there's a lot of people in government who are propping this guy up.
Right. And it's very scary that he's speaking at a Turning Point USA event. This is something that people should be bringing up. And I don't know who Patricia Heaton was talking about when she said conservatives. We know it's not Trump, man. And I'm glad you brought that up, because you're 100% right. But I think she might have been talking about J.D. Vance. And that is where
I mean,
will,
obviously so.
I'm not putting words.
Patricia, who I know personally, is someone who is probably the most moral and most devout person that you can possibly imagine, and comes from a long line of people who are exactly that, and uses her voice for good.
I felt so bad for her. And you know what? Can I tell you something, man?
Reading those comments was a real nightmare.
Yeah, and can I tell you something, man? You know what was heartbreaking the other night when I was talking to these people, to these young women, varying from ages of 16 to, let's say, 29, was that I didn't have an answer for them. And this is something we do every day, and I did not have an answer for them, because it's the same question I'm asking too. Where are the conservatives that are not coming out and saying, other than Sebastian Gorka and a few others at high-level positions, not coming out and saying, this isn't right. This is just simply, you're spreading lies. This is simply not true. And he's making Trump look like crap. This piece makes Trump look worse than Bibi. He's actually making Bibi the all-powerful. And Trump is
Puppet.
Calling for people to call it out is a tough one, because most of these, who we call influencers, they have an interest in growing their base, their followers, and cross mingling with guys like Tucker, Benny Johnson, anyone else, even that comedian.
I'm not asking for influencers. Influencers I've accepted are bought and paid for. I'm talking about people in the government, people that have positions of power other than a Ted Cruz and maybe a couple others. This is something that they should be calling out, saying, this is not my party. This is not our party. Listen, I'm the first person that did that with Bush. I have no problem doing that with when it was somebody like Romney. I have no problem doing it with people when I disagree with certain things they say to be 100% opposed to my views, my beliefs.
Well, we saw when JD Vance went on Theo Von's podcast,
The Mensa member.
he gave him pushback on the Palestine genocide thing,
thing.
right? So JD knows what's up. He's got his head on straight. JD's also friends with Tucker. And as much as I would love for him to come out and set his buddy straight and get him back on track, I mean, he's also allowed to disagree with the guy and still remain friends with him. We don't get to say who people get to be friendly with.
That's not.
I'm finding Tucker to be very, very off-putting.
By the way, did you hear me say defriend him?
What's that?
By the way, I didn't say defriend him. I said bring it up. There's a big difference. You could still be.
Right,
listen,
you're the person that bring it up publicly.
You're the person that constantly talks about having discussions with people. Both of you do on the other side of the aisle. We're all about having those discussions, except for the genocidal crazy guy in my dog park. We're all for open dialogue. That's simply what I'm saying, is somebody to come up and say, you know what, these statements are not okay. You're going after my boss, first of all. If you're the vice president, your job is also to protect your boss. Donald Trump doesn't need to come out and say, hey, Tucker, you've gone off the rails. If you're the vice president, he's talking about you at the same time.
Yeah. The president came out against Tucker, right? We talked about that.
Yes,
it would be great. It would be great if JD Vance did as well. I think we're spending a lot of time on this, and it's not really, I don't see it changing. I don't see JD Vance coming out against Tucker, and Tucker
He's
is
certainly not going to come out against
away.
Tucker if we don't say something. And I don't mean just us. I mean the people who have any kind of voice whatsoever, because you are watching not only JD Vance not say something against him, because we said, as we talked about before, we don't need to deplatform everybody, but we also don't need people to be platforming them. So I don't need him to necessarily come out and say, Tucker's a psychopath. Stop listening to him. He's clearly paid off and bought and paid for by Qatar and all the rest. I don't need him to say those things. And he also doesn't have evidence of those things. But because it's obvious and clear to anyone with eyeballs and a cerebral cortex, he doesn't have to invite him onto the Charlie Kirk show with the biggest audience that it's ever going to have when it's hosted by the vice president and give him a platform. When Turning Point USA had him speak at their convention, we were both like, all three of us were like, what the hell is going on here? And when he was announced as a speaker at the funeral, the joke we were telling was, this guy is going to make a whole thing about the Jews, right? We had a whole joke about it, Judah, where can you imagine? He won't do that at an actual funeral, but it was funny to think about. And then he did exactly that. This guy is consistently the same thing. So anyone who isn't seeing it now doesn't want to. And I would argue that some of those people are saying not that Theo Von has a good audience or doesn't have a good audience. He had a conversation with Theo Von, that's fine. But Tucker isn't going to change. Theo Von is also an effing idiot. And so he's saying what he's supposed to say. He's reading the script. But when he's told otherwise by JD Vance, he's like, oh, okay, whatever you say, boss. But Tucker is not going to change his mind. It doesn't matter what you do.
And I just want to just give one example.
And as a result, real quick, that means that if you want to use Tucker's influence, you have to prop up him in all his Nazi glory. And that's what they've been doing. And that's what JD Vance needs to stop doing. And if we don't keep saying it, it's never going to happen. Sorry, Judah.
And I just want to bring it back to the most of basic levels. Let's say the three of us, we have some serious disagreements with each other. some serious disagreements, right? And there's a long list of things. Okay, we bust chops, and we've known each other for a long, long, long time, and there's nothing that we're ever going to say that will break apart our friendship or our love for each other. And I put Golan into that same book, even though I thought his name was Golan Ramirez when I first met him, and that's what sort of got me.
Todo bien, sin problema.
But man,
But I hear what you're saying, and I also think that you have to understand. You know how you guys always tell me that I'm different? And I'm going to tell you guys you're different, especially when it comes to Tucker stuff. You're able to pick up on stuff, the subtle undertones that he's hinting at, that he's getting at, when the average person out there may not see that. And it might be off-putting. So,
man,
you
there
know,
was nothing subtle about what he said to Glenn Greenwald today.
no,
There
I
was
get
nothing
that.
subtle about that. What he said on the
Israel,
stage at Turning Point USA either. You're saying subtle because it's a nice way of kind of, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but it's a way of forgiving him from doing this stuff. Oh,
I'm
he
not
said
forgiving him.
hummus.
I
But,
know exactly what he's up to.
Stephen Crowder. I listen to Stephen Crowder talk about, well, hummus, that is something to eat over there, and that doesn't necessarily make me think of the Jews. So, we're going to put past it. But that doesn't mean
By
that
the
it wasn't
way, for the
obvious.
record, if the person online is correct, that hummus was not invented till the 13th century.
All right.
Of course,
But
it is something that the
I want to point
Israelis and the
something
Jews
out.
eat today, and
I
that's
want
the
to point
point.
something
That's
out.
why he said it.
I want to point something out, and that is that we see things that the general public may not see. And if we start pointing it out, I mean, what I do is I'm making a mental note, and I'm saying, all right, look, Tucker just did that thing with the homeless thing, comparing Jesus being crucified to Charlie Kirk's death. I got that. Got it.
Can I be
It
honest with you
wasn't
about
overt
something?
enough. It wasn't overt enough for me to make a statement about it. There are other things like saying that
If it was
Israel
the first and
dragged.
only thing, I would agree with you.
Yeah, fine.
But it's not.
And I'm okay with that. But I'm reserving the
I know,
accusations.
we discussed this.
I'm reserving
100%.
those accusations for the ones that are blatant, because
I'm
on
not
the other ones, I feel like there are people that may not get the same thing that we're seeing, and they might say, "Oh, you're just overreacting." And to that point, Mark Dubowitz, who I respect tremendously, the founder of Foundation for Defense of Democracy, FDD.org. They have a great podcast. Really like this guy. He's always on point. He put out a post that said Tucker Carlson used the memorial for Charlie Kirk, a passionate friend of Israel and the Jewish people, to spread anti-Semitic blood libels. I know his father, Richard Carlson, vice chair at FTD, who's strongly supported Jews in Israel. So I guess Tucker Carlson's dad is a vice chair at FDD. So that's the Foundation for Defense of Democracy, which Mark Dubowitz started. And then there was a guy who responded to that and said, listen, this guy Kurt, no, he didn't. I am the hardest core supporter of Jews in Israel there is. I have some major beefs with Tucker Carlson on a lot of issues, but this story of the crucifixion was not anti-Semitic. Jesus was a Jew, and and the Jewish leaders in cohort with the Romans crucified him, and there was nothing about Tucker's speech that was anti-Semitic. And this is a guy. So I'm just making a point. What I'm doing is I'm making a point.
We totally get what you're saying.
Look, that and your fire department friend and all these other people who didn't see it, and that's fine.
They
That
didn't see
doesn't
it,
mean it's
exactly.
not that's great. But you know what? That is how dog whistles work. The whole point of a dog whistle is you're saying something that certain people aren't going to see because they're not tuned into it. That's why it's called a dog whistle. Only dogs can hear the dog whistle. It's like humans going, dog whistles aren't whistles. So sorry, that doesn't count because these two guys didn't notice it, or even if it was 1,000
let me
or a
rephrase
million.
it.
There are plenty of people who are taking up arms, and look at the comments section of all of these Tucker things, and you will see all the people who did hear it and said, gotcha, Tucker. I understand what to do now, and I'm going to get ready for the Great Awakening, or whatever it is that they're getting ready to do with Tucker as their great leader, egging them on, focusing on the Jews. So the fact that two people in your group didn't see it has nothing to do with any of it.
I did not look at the comments, so I don't know what's going on there. But
you don't want to go.
No.
This whole concept of dog whistle is problematic. But what I like to do with that type of stuff is I use it for my own internal guidance. I'll say, okay, check mark. He just said that. Great. I know where he's going with this. Get ready. And then when he says something blatant like he did today on the Glenn Greenwald thing, then you call him out on it.
That's the point. Okay, just the point that you're bringing up right now. I was, as well as I do, I let this breathe. It's Thursday. We've been discussing this for 4 days. And I 100% agreed with you on letting this breathe. I went against Golan's wishes. I sided with your wishes. Are we all in agreement with that? But when he came out with this statement today, it's enough.
I'm just going to say this. The reason why I disagree, and I let it go, of course, and I let you go ahead and not mention it on our show when I wanted to. But the reason why it was important for me to at least express my opinion about it to you guys, and now I can do it here publicly, is because it's not the first thing. If it was the first thing, you go, I think I heard something. I'm going to put it in my back pocket and see if it's real. But if he has already done blood libel, if he has already hosted Holocaust revisionists, if he has already going on stage and saying anyone who serves in the IDF should lose their American, I mean, just one thing after another, him commenting on Israel policy vis-a-vis Jewish influence and everything else. He's done this so many times. So now this one is kind of subtle. So you're going to let it go, or you're going to put it in your back pocket? I'm sorry. Once they start shooting all your neighbors in the head and they come to your house and they go, by the way, you Jewish? And you're like, yeah. And they walk away. You're like, you know what? Maybe they're just asking. Too late. They've already started shooting all the neighbors in the head.
And I want to close this up just by saying, man, if we don't talk about this now, the left will be talking about this in the next upcoming election cycle. These are questions that will be asked of Trump, to just like with David Duke, to disassociate himself from him. These
Except
are questions.
This time he does know, and Tucker has influence that David Duke never had, and is on the inside thanks to J.D. Vance, and thanks to, by the way, Don Jr. and some of these other people who are friends with him, whatever it is, propping him up, putting him on podcasts and everything else.
So I save my harshest Tucker criticism, or anyone for that part, when I could actually point it at a thing. And it's not for me. I already know where that man stands. But if I want others to know where he stands, I'm not going to point out a dog whistle and say, hey guys, see? Because then it detracts from my argument.
But it doesn't detract from your argument.
I don't think it does.
Pile it in.
Then people just look at me and they go, oh, he's just hysterical.
No,
but
you
everything's anti-Semitic.
Sorry, wait. The list that I just gave you, none of which are dog whistles, and then you add, and then he also did the dog whistle. If someone questions you at that point or thinks you're just hysterical at that point, then they're not an honest broker, or they're not listening, or they are in Tucker's camp. And so, no, I'm sorry. That is a ridiculous. I hate to say, I'm not trying to insult you.
Most people are not that dialed in. They don't know this whole history.
But that's the whole point, man, is if you say to them, let me lay this out for you, like a lawyer would, let me lay this out for you. And you go through the first one, that's not so bad. Second one, oh, that might have been a dog whistle. Third one, oh my God. By the time you get to the seventh, eighth, ninth one, you start to realize there's no way that this isn't a pattern, right? So if you point it out and this is amongst the list, then there's no way to deny it. That's the point.
Listen, in men's defense, I just want to say this. I understand 100% of what he's saying. I truly do. And I went with him.
And I don't just do this with this.
No.
Go ahead.
I'm defending you, bro. I let me just defend you. But today with this statement that's coming out, it's unavoidable that this is something we have to get ahead of. And just like we post certain things that we want the president to do, this is something that truly needs to be gotten ahead of before we're not the ones asking the questions, before people are saying, are you aware that Tucker Carlson has 3 million followers and he's called this and this and this and this and this? What do you have to say to yourself? Listen, Turning Point's going to get this. Turning Point will have to answer for having him speaking at a Turning Point USA event. And these are questions that we're going to have to start thinking about if we actually want to have the presidency for the next 12 years. So I get what you're saying, man. This is the Seinfeld episode with Uncle Leo, right? Everything is anti-Semitism, Everything is anti-Semitism. Eventually, if you say everything is anti-Semitism, nothing's anti-Semitism. Correct. But the problem with Tucker is everything seems to be anti-Israel and anti-Semitism.
You're the one man who put up the video that showed how many times Israel, Jews, Israel,
of course.
Israel was
I'm
mentioned
not denying
recently.
it. What I'm
saying,
so
we don't have to pretend like one dog whistle is all we've got.
So what I'm saying is that when I want to show someone that guy's off base, the Charlie Kirk memorial speech is not the thing I show them. I show them.
No, it shouldn't be the first thing, but it can be
100%. And by the way, can I tell you something? I thought he was referring to himself during the speech. I didn't think he was even referring to Charlie Kirk. I thought he was referring to himself as the martyr. And that was my takeaway from Tucker's speech, because it is always about Tucker and nobody else. But here's my biggest
thing. By the way, you said he has 3 million followers, Judah. He has about 20 million followers.
20 million followers.
Yeah.
I meant that are real. I don't know I don't know the actual number. You never know the actual number. I just want to say this, man. The biggest reason I bring this up is because I don't want people sitting in back rooms having to discuss stuff that should be spoken about out loud. And I do believe the majority, the Washington Free Beacon came out and had a study where 43% of young people from ages 18 to 34, overwhelming support for Israel, overwhelming support for America. This is the Washington Free Beacon, which is obviously this is one of those polls where you could say, well, it's one-sided. Well, of course, they're asking 1,000 conservatives. So it's a one-sided poll. So I just think that's extremely encouraging. These are things that we have to look out for. And if we don't speak about these things out loud, other people will not. People are scared to say what they're feeling. I don't want Patricia Heaton feeling like she's alone. I don't want Mark Levin's feeling, and I don't want people like us. For 10 years, I was the guy screaming, Jesus is coming about certain things. My Christian friend always says this to me. And he's like, Judah, I thought you were crazy. And this is all about October 7th. One of my closest friends in the world, one of my best friends. And he would always say, Judah, I thought you were crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I wish I wasn't right about this one. This is one of those things I really wish I wasn't. But, man, I love you no matter what. And I totally hear what you're saying. I totally get the argument. And I promise you, we will get into the vaccine debate tomorrow.
Yeah, that one I'm looking forward to. That's going to be a fun one. I know you're looking
forward to. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank everybody on Truth. I just want to tell you we love you to the point where I'm not going to bring this person's name up. Somebody we know on Truth, go on. I get into this conversation last night where this person's talking about an E-Turbo, you rock. I was talking to this person about a farm, right? And men's always looking to invest in some of the weirdest stuff in the world. And he's talking about a working farm. So I'm like, well, how much is it? And, what's the ROI on this goal-on? And we're looking into cows. A Jewish kid from Brooklyn, so is men. And and I'm talking to men on the phone. This might be a good investment. It's a certain amount per acres in a certain place. And, he's telling me all you have to do is buy the bull, then the cows come from it. And I'm like, this might have been one of the funniest conversations, but I love having these conversations with people on Truth because I'm learning. I like learning about that stuff. I love America. I love this country so much that I don't want to lose it. I want our farmers to survive. I want everybody to make money for their families and live these great lives. And it's so important to me. And what people say is so important to me.
Just to add, I am interested in getting the farm. That for me, taking the family to the farm for the summer would be ideal, and on weekends. So kind of like a city boys farm where I'm not doing that much work, but we get to ride around on ATVs and tractors and chase cows or whatever.
So if you've got a farm, call men. He's ready to invest. Let's go.
There we
and
go.
we can make and Golan can make some movies on that farm. So it could be like
right.
You could be like a mini Taylor Sheridan. We'll get the farm. We'll get the farm for you, Golan. You just bring the cameras. And from the bottom of my heart, though, I mean that I love this country more than life. I do. I love this country. I love everything it has afforded us. I love everything. Everything of this country is the greatest country in the world, warts and all. I want to make sure we keep it that way. So when I talk about these people, this has nothing just to do with Israel. This has to do with our value system as Americans. As Americans, we should care about Israel. We should care about ISIS killing Christians. We should care about Christians being slaughtered in Africa. These are things we should care about. No matter what they tell us, that is important to us. And that doesn't make us not America only. It makes us MAGA, and MAGA cares, okay? MAGA is a loving movement. And I say this to people all the time. Go to a MAGA rally, you will see some of the nicest human souls in the world. Nobody will kick you out. None of that crap that happens on the left. Stay MAGA. On that note, I want to thank everybody. Remind everybody you could go to thedailycheatsheet.com. That's thedailycheatsheet.com. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world. Wherever you are, God bless you all.